You know, we're surrounded by pieces of paper we hardly even notice. Things like deeds, titles, employment contracts. They seem so boring. But what if I told you that these documents are some of the most powerful inventions in human history? Today, we're going to dig into how simple paperwork became the tool that literally forged our modern world, often by turning the real physical world into an abstract claim on a page.
All right, so let's get right to the heart of it, because this is the big question. We usually think of paperwork as just a record of things, right? Proof of something that already exists. But what if that's completely backward? The sources we're looking at today argue that paperwork doesn't just record reality, it creates it. And when it does, a simple document, as long as it's backed by the right authority, can just completely override the history, the claims, and even the physical presence of people on the ground.
So you really have to get this fundamental shift. On one side, you've got ownership by presence. It's simple. You live there, you use the land, your neighbors know it's yours. It's real, it's tangible. But then, on the other side, you have ownership by paper. That's a totally abstract claim based on a legal title, and it's not verified by your community, but by a distant government. And you have to understand, this change, it wasn't some natural evolution. It was an invention.
So in this explainer, we're going to trace how this powerful idea took over. First, we'll look at how the state and big money teamed up to give paper its power. Then, we'll see how things like maps and surveys were actually tools of conquest. We'll also get into how this very same logic was applied to people through labor contracts, and then finally, how it all culminates in today's financial system, a whole empire built on pure abstraction.
Okay, so the story of modern property, it doesn't start with a farmer building a fence. No, it begins with a brand new, incredibly powerful alliance, the marriage of commercial power, what we call capital, and sovereign authority, the state. This partnership created a system where the government didn't just allow private claims to wealth, it actively stamped, notarized, and guaranteed them with the full force of its power.
And this quote just nails it. Think about it. Barter, that's a local, tangible thing. You and I trade goods. But to claim you own something on a whole other continent, maybe a place you've never even seen, well, for that you need the state to make it official, to formalize the whole process and turn what might just be a land grab into a legally protected right.
And the state does this with a kind of, it's like a magic trick. It's called a legal fiction. And the most famous example of this is the corporation. A corporation isn't a person, right? You can't shake its hand. But a state charter, literally just a piece of paper, says that it is a person under the law. It can own land, it can sign contracts, it has legal rights, all because the state says so. That paper is its birth certificate.
And this brings us to a pretty stark conclusion. In this partnership, the state isn't some neutral referee on the sidelines. It's a cosigner. It provides the entire legal framework, the titles, the charters, the courts, that transforms the act of taking something into a legitimate, legally defensible transaction.
So let's look at how this abstract power was actually applied to the physical world. I mean, if a state can create a person out of thin air with a piece of paper, just imagine what it can do to an entire continent. This is where the tools of the surveyor, the compass and the map, become instruments of conquest.
This timeline shows you it's been a long, slow process. You go all the way back to the Doomsday Book, which cataloged every single piece of England for the king. Then you have things like the Doctrine of Discovery. And then you get to the U.S. Land Ordinance, which just carved up a continent into this neat, sellable grid. In every single one of these cases, the act of measuring and mapping, it's not just about discovery. It's an act of power that redefines the land itself and erases any claims that came before it. And this wasn't messy or chaotic. It was a system. It followed a really clear blueprint. Step 1, seizure. Then, the land gets surveyed, turning a living landscape into an abstract grid on a map. After that, notarization. The official document is created. And then the final, most important step. The legal system agrees that this piece of paper is now the one and only truth, and all other claims are silenced.
So here's the kicker. That title, or that deed, it doesn't actually mark the beginning of a rightful claim. It almost always shows up after the fact to provide what's called retroactive legitimacy. Its whole purpose is to launder conquest into a contract, to make a past act of violence look like a totally normal legal right today.
Now, this whole logic of creating reality with paper, it doesn't just stop with land. Oh no, it was also used to manage people. So, let's take a look at the labor contract and this idea that it's a free and equal agreement.
So, on the surface, the promise of a labor contract is all about freedom, right? Two equal parties coming together to negotiate. But the reality is often, completely different. When one person is desperate for a job just to survive, and the other is a massive corporation holding all the cards, is that really an agreement between equals? Or is it just necessity dressed up to look like consent?
And we see this so clearly today in the gig economy. The agreement a driver or a delivery person signs classifies them as an independent contractor. There's that legal fiction again. And that one little line in a document strips them of rights to things like benefits or a minimum wage. And of course, there's zero negotiation. It's a take-it-or-leave-it deal that often forces them to sign away their right to ever sue in court.
At the end of the day, what this really shows is that a signature on a contract, it doesn't always mean free will. A lot of the time, it just signifies that you're accepting an incredibly unequal power dynamic. The paperwork just provides this convenient, legal-looking cover for what is in reality a deeply coercive relationship.
Okay, so this brings us to the final evolution of the paper empire. I mean, if you can own land you've never set foot on and control someone's labor through a contract, what's the next logical step? It's an economy built almost entirely on abstract claims to future wealth. Welcome to the world of finance.
This chart shows that transformation perfectly. We've shifted from an economy where wealth came from actually producing tangible things, cars, food, computers, to a financialized economy where staggering fortunes are built by owning abstract legal claims, things like stocks, bonds, and derivatives.
And all of these things, stocks, derivatives, even these super complex insurance policies, they're just sophisticated contracts. They are pieces of paper, or these days, lines of code. And their value only exists because the state's legal system promises to enforce them. They are claims on wealth, not wealth itself.
And here is why this is so important. The harm that this system causes isn't always obvious. It's not a sword in your face, it's a summons in your mailbox. It's the foreclosure notice, the denied insurance claim, the pension fund that gets wiped out by a bad investment. It's a procedural kind of violence, one that happens in courtrooms and in boardrooms, where the person with the right paperwork, they almost always win.
So we've gone on this journey from a simple land deed all the way to a stock certificate, and we see the exact same pattern playing out. A whole system of power is built not on force by itself, but on this incredible alchemy of turning paper into reality, of making simple ink as hard and as real as iron.
This quote just perfectly captures the entire process, doesn't it? The initial act of taking something, whether it's land or labor, it's raw. But it's the legal system, the courtroom, that cleans it up, codifies it, and turns it into a precedent for the future. The pen provides the final, lasting victory that the sword could only begin.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We've seen that so much of our world, our economy, our social structure, it's all built on these legal fictions, these documents we just accept as true. So maybe the most powerful question we can ask is this: what happens when we actually start to question the paper itself? What happens when we look past the signature and ask where the legitimacy really comes from?